He didn't just hurt her, he tried to destroy her future completely. 7 months pregnant, Sophia Bennett stood at the top of the grand staircase in what used to be her dream home. One hand protecting her belly, the other holding divorce papers her husband had thrown at her. Marcus's words were quiet but mean, filled with alcohol and arrogance. "You're worthless without me," he said with a nasty smile before pushing her hard down the stairs. Her scream was cut short by the sound of breaking glass. He looked down at her broken body and felt powerful. But what he didn't know was that the woman lying at the bottom already owned everything he valued. Just 1 hour before, an email had arrived confirming her $100 million inheritance in full control of Bennett Enterprises, the company he always claimed he built by himself. While he celebrated with his mistress wearing Sophia's robe, she lay in a hospital bed with bruises covering her body and a new strength growing in her heart. He had pushed her down to show his power, but she would rise higher. She would turn her silence into a weapon and watch his kingdom fall with calm, perfect justice. This isn't just revenge. This is about getting back your dignity. This is the moment a woman changes betrayal into a plan and pain into perfect balance. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting her strength disappear unheard. But when you click that button, you support every woman who was pushed down, betrayed, and left broken, but still stood up to own everything that tried to destroy her. Subscribe now and tell us where you're watching from. Let Sophia know her rise reached you. The night was thick and quiet over the Bennett mansion, the kind of silence that only money and power could create. Inside, a crystal chandelier glowed over a staircase made of white marble. Sophia Bennett, 29 years old, 7 months pregnant, moved with the gentle grace of women who once believed they were safe. She used to be an art teacher and charity worker, but her world of art galleries and community events was replaced by Marcus's business dinners and money talks. The argument started with one cruel accusation. Marcus, 35, handsome and expensively angry, threw papers on the floor. "You're useless in every way," he snapped. His voice had the confidence of a man who never heard the word no. His black suit still smelled of expensive cologne and someone else's perfume. Sophia stood near the staircase, her hand on her stomach. "You're drunk," she said, quietly. Her voice wasn't scared, it was tired. Deep down, she already knew this was who he really was. The mask had just fallen tonight. Isabella appeared from the hallway, wearing Sophia's silk robe, walking barefoot on the marble. Isabella Torres was 27, a former event planner Marcus had met at a company party. She played innocent perfectly, the trembling lip, the fake guilty look. "Marcus," she whispered softly, "this isn't—" "Stay out of this," he barked, but he didn't mean it. He wanted her watching. His cruelty always needed an audience. Rosa, the 62-year-old housekeeper who had raised Sophia's mother, froze near the dining room entrance, holding a tray. Her eyes moved between them, wondering if she should step in. She had seen this before, Marcus's anger, his fists, his apologies afterwards. Quietly, she put the tray down and took out her phone, camera recording silently. Marcus stepped closer. His breath smelled of wine. "You think you can embarrass me in front of my own staff after everything I've given you? You gave me your last name and took everything else." Her face twisted with anger. He lifted his hand, not to hit, but to push. The movement was quick and impulsive. Sophia's foot slipped on the polished marble. She reached for the railing that wasn't close enough and fell down the stairs. Her scream caught in her throat as glass shattered below. The silence after was louder than any sound. Isabella gasped, but Marcus's face stayed frozen. He stared down at her, breathing hard. Then, in a moment that would define him forever, he leaned over the railing, spit down, and whispered, "You were always weak." At that exact moment, Sophia's phone on the side table lit up, a voicemail from Mr. Richard Hayes, her late uncle's lawyer. His voice was calm and professional. "Sophia, this is urgent. You've inherited everything. Call me before anyone else finds out." Marcus didn't hear over his own heartbeat. He grabbed his coat and keys, saying something about calling an ambulance as he walked out. Isabella stood halfway up the stairs, trembling. "Daniel, she's—" "Handle it," he snapped, pushing past her. The sound of the front door slamming echoed through the house like a judgment. Rosa rushed forward, kneeling beside Sophia. "Mrs. Bennet, can you hear me?" Her voice was steady, though her hands shook. The sight of blood on the marble made her heart stop. "The baby! Dear Dodd, the baby!" Sophia blinked. Her vision was blurry. The chandelier above spun slowly, each crystal a piece of memory. Her wedding day. Marcus smiling, promising to protect her. Her mind reached for one thought: the baby has to survive. As the ambulance siren got closer, her consciousness started to fade. In the darkness, she remembered another voice, calm and proud. Her Uncle Robert sitting beside her at his desk 2 years ago. "You don't have to be loud to be powerful," he'd said, signing something she wasn't allowed to see. "You'll understand one day." Now she did. When she woke up, hospital lights filled her eyes. Machines beeped steadily. Her right arm was in a sling. Her ribs hurt badly. But the soft rhythm of her unborn child echoed on the monitor beside her. "Alive," she whispered. She turned her head to see Marcus sitting in a chair, face in his hands. "Sophia," he whispered. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It was an accident." Her lips opened, but no words came out. The air around him felt fake. He reached for her hand, but she pulled it away. "I'm sorry," he said again, tears in his voice. "Isabella means nothing. I just lost control. You have to believe me." The door opened. Nurse Maria stepped in. She was in her mid-30s with kind eyes and a small scar on her wrist that told of her own battles. She looked from Marcus to Sophia, and in that silent look, something passed between women who understood pain without words. "Your wife needs rest," Maria said firmly. Marcus hesitated. His phone buzzed in his pocket. As he turned to check it, Sophia saw the message on his screen. From Isabella: "Miss you, can't wait till she's gone." Sophia stared at it without blinking. No tears, no shock, just quiet understanding. She had spent years being quiet. Now, quiet would be her weapon. Later that night, when Marcus left to take a call, she asked Nurse Maria softly, "Can I have my phone?" The nurse hesitated. "You should be resting." "I just need to hear a message," she said gently, but with command. The nurse handed it over. Sophia pressed play on the voicemail. "Sophia, it's Richard Hayes. Your uncle's estate has cleared. You're now the only heir. The liquid money totals $100 million, plus full control of Bennett Enterprises. Congratulations, Mrs. Bennet." Her hand trembled once, then became still. She turned her gaze toward the window where city lights flickered like distant fires. Marcus's company. Her company now. He just didn't know it yet. When he returned, she was calm. Too calm. He tried to touch her face. "We'll start over," he said, You'll see. I'll fix everything." Sophia's lips curved into a small smile. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, but calculation. "You should go home," she said softly. "I need sleep." He hesitated, unsure. "Sophia." "Go," she whispered again. And for the first time, Marcus obeyed. When the door closed behind him, Sophia breathed out. The nurse adjusted her IV, but Sophia's eyes stayed open. The monitor beeped gently beside her, reminding her that the life inside her still had a chance, and so did she. As she lay there, her mind replayed every detail. The robe Isabella wore, the wineglass Marcus held, the bruises that weren't new. The patterns were clear now, like brushstrokes in one of her old paintings, only this time, she wasn't the subject, she was the artist. Between exhaustion and awakening, she whispered into the quiet, "If he wants to play sharp, then I'll be sharper." Outside the hospital window, morning began to rise, not as light, but as revenge dressed in grace.
3 days had passed since the fall. The hospital room had become a strange kind of quiet, the kind that pressed down like fog, heavy with questions no one wanted to ask. Machines hummed softly. A monitor blinked beside Sophia, lying in white sheets. Her arms were bruised, ribs wrapped in bandages. But the soft beeping that filled the room wasn't just hers, it was the sound of her baby's heart. The nurse on duty, Nurse Maria Lopez, 54, known for her quiet strength, moved carefully between machines. Her uniform was clean, her eyes kind but watching. "You're healing well," she said softly. "Your baby is strong, a fighter." Sophia smiled faintly, not from joy but disbelief. The last 3 days felt unreal, like she was watching herself from outside her body, signing papers, nodding through police questions, pretending her husband wasn't the one who pushed her. Marcus Bennett, 35, her husband, hadn't visited since the first night. His assistant had sent flowers with a short note. "Rest and recover. Let's not make this public." That single sentence summed him up perfectly. Before the fall, Marcus was the man everyone admired, a self-made CEO in expensive suits with charming lies. His empire, Bennett Enterprises, built towers and destroyed lives equally. In public, he praised Sophia as his inspiration. In private, she was his property. Now she lay in that clean room, broken but breathing, when her phone buzzed on the nightstand. The name on the screen, Mr. Richard Hayes, Thompson Legal Group. A memory flashed, 1 week before the incident. She'd seen unopened emails from that same law firm, subject lines that read, "Estate Settlement Update." She had ignored them, too busy dealing with Marcus's growing temper. She picked up the phone. Her voice was a whisper. "Mr. Hayes?" "Mrs. Bennett?" The man's tone was measured, professional, carrying the weight of old money and older secrets. "I apologize for the delay in reaching you. The estate of your late uncle, Mr. Robert Bennett, has finally cleared all legal holds. You're now the main heir." Sophia blinked. "What? What does that mean exactly?" "It means, ma'am," he said, pausing, "you now have full control of the Bennett family trust, about $100 million in cash, and—" She sat up too quickly. Pain shot through her ribs. "And what?" "And majority ownership of Bennett Holdings, which as of last quarter completed buying Marcus's company." Her eyes went wide. For a moment she couldn't speak. The words didn't seem real. Her uncle's old company, the old one Marcus had laughed at for being outdated, had bought his empire completely. Outside, a siren cried faintly, the perfect sound for the moment her world turned upside down. "I own his company," she whispered. In simple terms, yes, Hayes replied. You're the controlling owner. Congratulations, Mrs. Bennet. The word congratulations hung in the air like a cruel joke. Maria turned from the baby monitor, catching the look on Sophia's face, not shock, but understanding. There was a new steadiness in her now, something unfamiliar. Can you send me the documents? She asked softly. Already emailed. For security, I'd suggest not discussing this until we've moved the money under your private control. Sophia nodded slowly, eyes fixed on her sleeping baby. Don't tell anyone yet, she said quietly, especially not my husband. There was a pause. Hayes's voice changed, becoming uneasy. Ma'am, I wish this call was purely good news, but there's something else. Sophia's fingers tightened around the phone. What is it? He hesitated, the kind of pause that warned the truth would hurt. We got an alert from your bank this morning. Someone tried to get a $2 million business loan using your name, your social security number, and your joint account. Her heart skipped. Who? I've already confirmed with the bank, Hayes said grimly. It was Marcus Bennet. For a moment, time stopped. The room grew dark. The beeping machines became sharp single sounds. Sophia looked at her reflection in the window, pale skin, eyes ringed in purple, hair limp, and saw not weakness, but the first spark of control. Maria noticed the change. Are you all right? Sophia forced a smile. Yes, she said softly. Better than I've been in a long time. When the call ended, she set the phone on the tray and stared at the baby incubator. Her daughter's tiny hand moved in sleep, fingers reaching for invisible safety. Sophia whispered, You'll never feel small the way I did. Memories flashed. Marcus's laughter at their anniversary. His voice at dinner, telling her she'd never understand business. His mocking words when she mentioned her uncle's money. Old money dies with old men. But the old man hadn't died empty. He'd left her a weapon sharper than any knife. Outside, rain began to fall, the first drops soft against the window. In that stillness, something changed inside her. Not rage, not sadness, but quiet power waiting to wake. Sophia reached for her laptop. When the login screen appeared, she whispered the same words her uncle told her. Power doesn't shout, Sophia. It signs quietly. She opened her email from Hayes and read everything. Her fingers hovered over the mouse. The documents were there. Legal ownership, transfer codes, a signature waiting. She clicked sign. The monitor beside her beeped in rhythm, the heartbeat of a premature child in the beginning of justice.
4 months later, the house no longer looked like a home. It looked like a museum of fake perfection. White flowers by the window, gold-framed photos of smiling faces, and one woman pretending she was happy to be alive. Sophia Bennet stood in front of the mirror, her cast freshly removed. The scars on her arm were pale lines now, faint reminders of the fall she refused to let control her. Outside the bedroom door, soft laughter drifted from the living room. Marcus's laughter. Her husband, 35, the public hero with the perfect smile. He had posted again that morning, a photo of Sophia in the garden, sunlight on her shoulders. Caption, "My recovering angel." Thousands of likes, dozens of comments praising his care. The lie made her stomach turn. She turned from the mirror as the door opened. Marcus leaned in, tie loose, holding coffee that smelled too sweet. "You look beautiful today," he said, almost back to normal. Normal. The word had become an act. He set the coffee beside her and picked up her pill bottle. "Don't forget these. The doctor says you need to take them regularly." She watched him pour pills into her palm. Too many, she noticed, but smiled anyway. "Thank you," she said, swallowing only one when he turned away. The second one slipped quietly into her pocket. In public, Marcus's charm was armor. In private, it was a weapon. He controlled everything now. Her medicine, her schedule, her money, even her phone password had been changed for security. He insisted on handling her hospital bills, the lawyer's papers, the bank accounts. Every day, he reminded her she was lucky to have him. Lucky. That evening, as dinner guests arrived, Isabella Torres appeared, Marcus's assistant. She was 27, beautiful in the careful way women are when they know they're being compared. Her perfume arrived before she did. Her heels clicked across marble floors that still showed faint marks from Sophia's fall. "Mrs. Bennett," Isabella said smoothly, handing her a folder. "These are for Marcus's review. He said you could look first." Sophia accepted the folder with a polite smile. The label read, "Bennett Holdings Acquisition, Confidential." Her heart skipped, but her face stayed calm. "Of course," she said, voice steady. Isabella smiled. Red lipstick, perfect. "Thank you. You've always been so gracious." The smile faded when Sophia noticed the faint red mark Isabella's lipstick left on the document edge. The stain stood out against white paper like a confession written in color. After dinner, when guests left and Marcus disappeared into his office with Isabella, Sophia sat alone at the kitchen table. She opened the folder and read, company documents, money transfers, signatures. Then she froze. The header had the Bennett Holdings logo, the company she owned. Her ownership was hidden under legal language and fake companies. Marcus's business was still under her control. Her control. A memory hit like a whisper. Her wedding day. She stood in lace dress, her Uncle Robert beside her. He hadn't smiled during the ceremony. He'd only said one thing before walking her down. "Love him if you must, Sophia, but sign your name last." She hadn't understood then. Now she did. It wasn't advice. It was a warning dressed as wisdom. In the present, Marcus's voice cut through the memory. "Darling, are you still awake?" She closed the folder instantly, sliding it under a cookbook. "Just finishing tea," she called back. He appeared in the doorway, jacket off, tie loose, the practiced smile in place. "You really shouldn't push yourself," he said, walking over. His tone had that careful edge, concern sharpened into command. "I'm fine," she replied, voice soft but sure. His hand stayed on her shoulder too long. Then he laughed lightly. "Tomorrow I'll take you out, to that new restaurant downtown. Everyone should see how well you're doing." And just like that, he was gone. Back to the office, back to Isabella, back to the woman who thought she was hidden. As his footsteps faded upstairs, Sophia rose quietly, went to his study, and sat at his laptop. The wallpaper was a smiling photo of them on their honeymoon, years ago in Spain, before his ambition grew bigger than his love. She hesitated, then entered his password. Still the same. His ego had always been predictable. Marcus B. 20. Her pulse quickened as she searched his files. Folders of money transfers, company emails, connections to secret accounts, all linking back to the Bennett Holdings purchase. He was stealing money from her company. She took out a small silver USB drive labeled "For Robert" and inserted it. Her hands were steady as she copied the documents. It wasn't anger guiding her now. It was something colder, clearer. This wasn't the woman who fell down the stairs. This was the woman who got up. As the progress bar filled, she heard faint laughter from upstairs. Isabella's, high and careless. Sophia whispered to herself, "Keep laughing." When the transfer finished, she removed the drive, slipped it in her pocket, and turned off the screen. From the hall, Marcus called out, "Sophia, are you still awake?" She closed the laptop and smiled faintly toward the doorway. "Just going to bed." As she passed the table, the document Isabella had given her caught the light. That red lipstick mark still glowed faintly across the name, Bennett Holdings Acquisition. A symbol, a warning, a promise. Sophia brushed her thumb over it, then whispered so quietly the walls barely heard, "You signed your name first, Isabella, and I always sign last." The house fell silent again, but beneath that calm surface, something had begun, an awakening wrapped in silk and steel. The clock read 2:17 a.m. when Sophia finally opened the files she'd stolen from Marcus's laptop. The house slept around her, covered in expensive silence, that eerie quiet only money could buy. Outside, moonlight traced the glass balcony, lighting her face. Tired, bruised under makeup, but sharper now. The softness that once defined her had turned into precision. Her fingers moved slowly across the keyboard. Each click sounded louder than it should, like a confession echoing down the hall. The folder was labeled innocently, Quarterly Reports Q3, but buried inside was corruption. Bills that didn't match projects, employee bonuses sent to unknown accounts, contracts changed with fake signatures. She scrolled further. Bank transfers to a name that stopped her breath. CV Holdings. Her husband's middle name was Vincent. For a long moment, she just stared at the screen, understanding what that meant. Every time Marcus had smiled in public, claiming to build a future for their family, he'd been building a fortress for himself, funding by her company's money. The empire she now secretly owned had been bleeding into his pockets for years. She whispered into the silence, "You planned this." Her mind flashed back, a hospital corridor, pale walls, a doctor explaining costs while she could barely sit up. Marcus's arm around her shoulders, gentle, rehearsed. "Let me handle the bills, sweetheart. You don't need that stress." And she had signed papers without reading them. Power of attorney, merged accounts, medical permissions. She remembered his thumb brushing over her signature, the way he'd smiled like victory dressed as care. Now, with truth glowing cold on the screen, she understood. Marcus hadn't lost control the night of the staircase. He had executed a plan that started long before she fell. A soft chime pulled her back. She glanced at the baby monitor beside the laptop. Grace, tiny and fragile, sleeping in the next room. The gentle rise and fall of her chest calmed her racing thoughts. She wasn't fighting for herself anymore. She took out the small silver USB drive labeled For Robert, the one that belonged to her uncle, the one she'd used to copy Marcus's files. She connected it and began taking screenshots of everything. Bills, emails, contracts, one by one. Each captured image felt like taking back power. When the folder was full, she opened her email and typed a message to her lawyer, Mr. Richard Hayes, the same calm voice that had told her about her inheritance months ago. Subject line, insurance. No greeting, no explanation, just attachments. Her quiet war in digital form. She hesitated before pressing send, her finger hovering over the button. Her uncle's voice came back to her, as it often did when the world demanded strength. Power doesn't roar, Sophia. It whispers and signs quietly. Click. The message flew. Her pulse steadied for the first time in weeks. Then a soft ping, an incoming email. At first, she thought it might be Hayes replying, but when she saw the sender, her stomach dropped. From Isabella Torres. Subject, medical records. Urgent. The preview glowed on the screen. Don't forget to delete her medical records. The board can't know. Sophia froze. Her own name sat in the thread beneath it. Sophia Bennett, patient file access request. Her eyes narrowed as she opened the chain. Isabella had sent the message not to Marcus's work email, but his personal one. The thread was casual, careless, their usual tone when scheming behind her back. Isabella,
If the auditors see the hospital incident, it could flag the insurance claim, delete her file, say the data was corrupted. Marcus. Handled. I'll make sure Hayes never gets a copy. The meaning was acid in her throat. They hadn't just taken her money, they'd tried to erase her proof of survival. Her fall, her injuries, her trauma, all reduced to corrupted data. For a long, trembling second, she couldn't move. Then something inside her, something quiet and furious, began to wake. She reached for her phone and took a picture of the email thread. The glow from the screen cast sharp light across her face. Her reflection in the laptop looked almost foreign now. Same eyes, different woman. Her lips parted, and she whispered, "Delete me, will you?" The words weren't a question. They were a promise. She opened a new document and typed a note, calm and deliberate. "If anything happens to me or my daughter, release everything." She saved it inside the USB drive named for Robert. Her uncle's quiet ghost felt closer tonight, almost approving. From the hallway, footsteps echoed faintly. Marcus's, slow and unhurried, heading towards their bedroom. Sophia closed the laptop, slid the drive into her robe pocket, and poured herself water to look casual. The door creaked open. Marcus appeared, half smiling, shirt unbuttoned, eyes tired from pretending. "You're still awake?" She looked over her shoulder, tone smooth. "Couldn't sleep." He leaned against the doorframe, that practiced smirk returning. "You think too much, Sophia. You always have." She met his gaze without flinching. "Maybe that's how I survived." He didn't respond, just gave a tight laugh and turned away. When his footsteps disappeared upstairs, Sophia breathed out. Her hands trembled only slightly as she reopened the laptop to check the email to Hayes had sent. It had. Outside, the first hints of morning began to wash over the estate. Pale light fell across the documents still open on the screen. A digital record of Marcus's lies. She whispered to herself, almost tenderly, "Good morning, Mr. Bennett." The line wasn't affection. It was a warning. The war had begun, and he didn't even know he'd already lost the first battle.
The winter sun bled pale through glass walls of the rehab center, filling the room with the kind of clarity that left no shadows to hide behind. Sophia Bennett, dressed in soft gray and steady determination, gripped the parallel bars and took another slow step forward. Her reflection in the mirrored wall met her gaze, shoulders square, face calm. "Perfect," said Dr. Sarah Levine, the physical therapist guiding her through recovery. Dr. Levine was in her early 40s, practical but kind, the kind of woman who believed every muscle carried memory. "You're balancing your weight better today." Sophia breathed out through her nose, the faintest smile on her lips. "Balance takes time," she said quietly. Levine nodded. "Exactly. Balance isn't about not falling, it's about learning how to correct yourself before you hit the ground." Sophia's eyes softened. The words landed differently than intended. Every stretch, every movement was more than healing. It was taking back control. After the session, she sat by the window overlooking the snow-covered parking lot. Her phone buzzed with an email from Mr. Richard Hayes. Her pulse quickened. She read it twice before calling him directly. "Mr. Hayes," she said, voice low but firm, "we need to move forward." His calm voice answered, "Understood. I've already filed freeze requests on 3 accounts linked to CV Holdings. Officially, it's a risk audit under Bennett Holdings policy." She smiled faintly. Perfect wording. No one will question it. Hayes paused thoughtfully. "You've been preparing for this, haven't you?" Sophia looked down at her healing hands, still showing faint scars from her fall. "I've been rehearsing in silence," she said. As she hung up, her gaze drifted to the notebook on her lap, a leather journal with the initials RB, her uncle Robert Bennett's.
She opened it to a fresh page, writing in neat strokes. Speech draft. Balance takes time. Sometimes the fall isn't the end. It's the measure of how far one can rise. The pen paused. She wrote, "The gala will be the moment. He'll see me and he'll understand what stillness can build." That afternoon, Sophia walked into Bennett Holdings headquarters for the first time since her uncle's funeral. The lobby still smelled faintly of his cologne, cedar and smoke. It grounded her. Behind the reception desk sat Katie Marshall, late 20s, efficient and bright-eyed, the new coordinator for the firm. Katie straightened when she saw her. "Mrs. Bennett, I wasn't expecting—" "Just Sophia," she corrected gently. "I wanted to see the place again." Katie smiled, flustered. "Of course, things have changed a lot since Mr. Bennett passed. There's even a Founders Gala next week. It's all anyone can talk about. The board plans to introduce the new majority owner publicly." The words hit heavy. "The new owner?" she asked softly, as if confirming what she already knew. "Yes, ma'am." Katie lowered her voice. "Mr. Bennett, Marcus, has been dropping hints about some major announcement. Everyone assumes it's him. He said he's preparing a speech titled Legacy and Leadership. Sounds big." Sophia smiled faintly, face unreadable. "Yes, big indeed." As she turned to leave, Katie added, "It's invitation only, but if you'd like to attend, I can add your name to the list." "I'll handle that personally. Thank you, Katie." Outside, the air was crisp and clean. Sophia pulled her coat tighter, breath visible in the cold. For a moment, she closed her eyes, remembering her uncle's steady voice. "Don't rush the boardroom, Sophia. The quietest person there often owns the table." That evening, she sat by the fireplace in her home office. Marcus was away on a business trip, which meant he was likely with Isabella. It gave her space to move. She called Hayes once more. He answered on the first ring. "Mr. Hayes," she said, tone even but with a hint of urgency beneath it. "I visited headquarters today. Marcus is preparing for something." There was a pause. Papers shuffled on his end. "That matches what I've heard. Bennett Industries Board filed a joint event registration under Bennett Holdings' name. That gala will be their platform." Sophia's voice turned to silk. "Then that's where we end the show." Hayes hesitated before speaking again, voice quieter now. "If you plan to attend, bring your original stock certificate. It's the physical proof of your controlling ownership. He'll try to challenge it with words, but with that document, there's nothing he can do." Sophia leaned back in her chair, firelight dancing across her calm face. "Then I'll bring it," she said, "along with the truth." There was a beat of silence before Hayes added, almost as a warning, "Mrs. Bennett, this will be public. Once you do this, there's no going back." Her eyes moved toward her uncle's portrait on the mantel. The light caught his smile, faint and knowing. She whispered, "I'll be there, Robert. I'll sign last, just like you said." As she hung up, her phone lit with a new notification, an alert from Marcus's social media. He just posted another photo, himself at dinner, wine glass raised. Caption, "Celebrating new beginnings." Sophia's smile returned, small, steady, and dangerous. "So am I," she murmured. The fire popped softly beside her. The house was silent, except for the faint rustle of paper as she opened her notebook again, adding one final line beneath her speech notes. "Balance is not silence, it's strategy." And in the quiet glow of firelight, the woman once pushed to the floor, prepared to rise, not with noise, but with proof.
The chandeliers of the Bennett Grand Ballroom sparkled like captured stars, their light spilling over glass, silk, and ambition. Reporters lined the marble staircase, cameras flashing as a string quartet played something elegant enough to hide the tension in the air.
Every powerful name in the city was here, CEOs, board members, investors, all circling the same two people who had mastered the art of performance. Marcus Bennett, perfect in a tailored navy tuxedo, stood at the center of it all, champagne glass raised, his smile bright enough to blind. Isabella Torres, glowing and poised, held his arm like a designer accessory. Her gold dress caught every flash, and her rehearsed laugh echoed like a melody practiced too often. "Tonight," Marcus began, voice steady through the microphone, "we celebrate a new chapter in legacy and leadership. Bennett Industries, soon to merge fully under Bennett Holdings, enters an age of innovation, guided by vision, family, and love." He paused for effect, scanning the crowd with practiced ease. His gaze found the cameras. He'd always known how to charm an audience. Behind him, banners of the company logo stretched wide across the stage, gleaming under spotlights. The audience clapped politely, powerful men and women who applauded because power demanded it. Marcus's grin widened. "And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to welcome the new figure representing Bennett Holdings, a partnership that will define our future." Isabella squeezed his arm, confident. Everything was going exactly as planned. But then, the master of ceremonies, an older gentleman with a crisp voice and sharp glasses, glanced at his card and frowned slightly. The microphone caught his hesitation. "Please welcome," he read carefully, "our new chairwoman of Bennett Holdings, Mrs. Sophia Bennett." The ballroom froze. A wave of whispers rippled through the crowd like sudden wind cutting across water. Cameras turned, lights pivoting toward the entrance. Marcus's smile died, his hand lowered slowly from mid-toast. From the shadows of the grand staircase, Sophia Bennett appeared, composed, glowing, draped in a white gown that flowed like calm defiance, the color he once forbade her to wear. Each step she took echoed, measured, deliberate. The hush deepened as her presence filled the room. No drama, no announcement beyond her name. She didn't need one. Isabella's grip on Marcus's arm tightened. "Marcus," she whispered, voice brittle, "what is she doing here?" He didn't answer. His throat closed as cameras swiveled to capture the moment. The betrayed wife turned ghost, walking into his victory speech. Sophia stopped at the edge of the stage. The crowd parted naturally. The MC offered her the microphone with a shaky hand, his professionalism fraying. She took it gently. Her voice, when it came, was calm as still water. "Funny how fate makes you work for your wife." Laughter, nervous and uncertain, rippled through the room. The sound of glasses being set down followed like dominoes. Marcus's lips twitched. "Sophia," he said tightly, stepping toward her, voice low enough to sound intimate to the audience but edged with panic. "This isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," she interrupted softly. She turned to the audience, tone warm and composed. "My Uncle Robert Bennett once told me that real power isn't loud, it's patient. It waits until silence becomes the loudest thing in the room." She paused, letting the words breathe. "Tonight, I honor that silence." Whispers erupted. Investors looked at each other, unsure if this was part of the program. Photographers leaned closer. Sophia lifted a white folder from her clutch, small, elegant, official. The gold Bennett seal glinted under chandelier light. She opened him Bennett envelope. The hush was absolute. Inside were printed loan forms, each page stamped and signed, her own signature forged at the bottom. She held them up so the nearest cameras could see. "A $2 million loan," she said, "applied under my name without my permission." Gasps filled the ballroom. Marcus stepped forward, voice rising. "That's ridiculous. This is a mistake. Someone's—" But Isabella's face gave him away before he could finish. Her smile had vanished. Her knuckles whitened around her clutch. Sophia tilted her head slightly, studying both of them. "Mistake?" she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Or pattern?" The reporters were already snapping photos, flashes lighting Marcus's frozen expression. Mr. Hayes, standing near the back of the hall, met Sophia's eyes and gave a slow, approving nod, the silent signal they'd agreed upon. The trap was set. Sophia closed the folder, tone soft but final. Tonight was supposed to be your new beginning, Marcus, but beginnings require truth, and truth always arrives fashionably late. The cameras clicked again. Marcus's champagne glass slipped from his hand and shattered against the floor, the sound ringing across marble like punctuation. Sophia looked down at the pieces without blinking, then raised her eyes to his and whispered just loud enough for him to hear, "Balance takes time." The music had stopped. The silence was hers now. And the war had officially gone public.
The ballroom that had once hummed with applause now pulsed with unease. The chandelier light seemed harsher, cutting through perfume and panic. On stage, Sophia Bennett stood calm, glowing under the white spotlight. The folder in her hand was no longer just paper, it was power. "Before we continue," she said evenly, voice amplified but unhurried, "let's look at a few numbers together." Behind her, the massive LED screen, once looping the Bennett Industries logo, flickered. Gasps rippled as the first slide appeared. Transaction history, CV Holdings. Rows of numbers glowed white against black, dates, amounts, destinations, each one damning. Marcus's throat tightened. "This is lies," he hissed. "Turn it off." Sophia didn't flinch. "Actually, this is transparency." Another slide replaced the first, wire transfers totaling millions sent through secret accounts in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Singapore. Then came the fake bills, the false vendors, a screenshot of Isabella's email signature approving payments. The audience murmured louder now, a low collective growl of disbelief. Photographers snapped like lightning. Sophia's voice never rose. "These documents represent 5 years of theft, money stolen from our own charity programs, funds meant for community housing, sent to personal accounts." The next slide appeared. Recipient name, Isabella Torres. A hush so complete fell that even the hum of the projector felt deafening. Isabella's eyes widened. Her painted lips trembled. She took an unsteady step backward, bumping into a waiter. This isn't." Sophia turned her gaze towards her, calm and precise. The lipstick mark on the acquisition file helped confirm which copy was signed, Miss Torres. The audience reacted. A few gasps, a few quiet snickers from those who'd once envied Isabella's position. She began moving towards the exit, her gold gown dragging behind like guilt made visible. Meanwhile, Marcus's confidence cracked visibly, his palms slick with sweat, his smile now a grimace. "This is a mockery," he hissed. "Turn it off." Sophia met his fury with stillness. "Authority isn't claimed, Marcus, it's documented." She lifted a new sheet of paper, holding it between 2 fingers. "This," she said, "is the original ownership certificate of Bennett Holdings. My name, my uncle's seal, signed and notarized before your first company even existed." The audience applauded, soft at first, uncertain, then growing in strength as the weight of truth settled. Marcus's jaw clenched. "You planned this. You've been spying." "I've been surviving," she interrupted gently. Her gaze flicked briefly to the cameras, then beyond them to something only she could see, a memory. Hospital light, pale and sterile. 4 months earlier, Sophia sat in the recovery ward, her newborn cradled against her chest. Baby Grace, so tiny she fit between her hands, heartbeat fragile yet strong. The nurse had stepped away. The world was still. Sophia brushed her lips across the infant's forehead and whispered, "You'll never see what I saw. You'll only see strength." Tears had filled her eyes but never fell. That promise had carried her through every lie, every step of patience. The moment she chose not to break, that was the true beginning of tonight.
Back in the ballroom, Sophia lowered the final page of documents and looked directly at Marcus. For attacking your pregnant wife, for fraud, and for breaking your duty, you are hereby removed as CEO of Bennett Industries. Silence, then gasps. Security moved quietly toward the stage as Marcus lunged, his fury finally breaking through the last of his polish. "You can't do this to me," he shouted, voice echoing off marble and crystal. Two uniformed guards caught him before he reached her. One officer, David Reed, the same officer who'd taken her statement after her fall, grabbed his arm firmly. Recognition flickered in Sophia's eyes. The universe had delivered balance. "Let go of me," he roared, struggling. "This is my company." Sophia didn't step back. Her calm was surgical. "Correction," she said softly, leaning forward just enough that the microphone caught her whisper. "You spat on your boss, Marcus." A shiver ran through the audience, a mix of shock and satisfaction. Marcus froze, realizing the cameras were still rolling, the press still filming. His fury dissolved into horror. Officer Reed signaled the other guard. They escorted Marcus off stage, his protests swallowed by flashes of light. Isabella, pale and trembling, slipped through a side exit, leaving behind the empire she'd helped destroy. Sophia stood alone beneath the chandelier, its light falling across her white gown, a woman both resurrected and remade. She turned back to the microphone, face composed. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "thank you for joining us for the truth." The audience erupted into applause, not thunderous but respectful, the kind reserved for those who had earned not pity but power. As she left the stage, Mr. Hayes met her halfway down the aisle. "It's done," he whispered. Sophia breathed out, poise never cracking. "No," she murmured back, "it's just beginning." She passed the reporters without stopping. Cameras followed, flashes chasing her down the marble corridor, as if capturing the moment Karma stood up in heels and walked away. Behind her, the ballroom doors closed, muffling the chaos of Marcus's fall. Ahead, the future opened in silence, not empty, but earned.
The ballroom had become a scene of fallen elegance, glitter, silence, and disbelief. What began as a gala now felt like a public execution of ego. The whispers had turned into cautious murmurs, the clinking of champagne glasses replaced by the low hum of authority. Through the open double doors, two uniformed officers entered, joined by Detective Laura Martinez, a sharp-eyed woman in her early 40s, with a calm but commanding presence. She wasn't new to white-collar crimes. She'd built her reputation untangling webs of lies spun by men who thought charm was protection. Behind her followed Officer David Reed, the same man who had once pulled Sophia's broken body from the staircase. His gaze moved toward her now, recognition soft but steady. "Detective Martinez, Bennett Legal Division," announced a voice over the noise. "Executing a lawful arrest under Section 213, fraud, theft, and falsified documentation." The flash of police badges cut through the crowd's unease like lightning through glass. Cameras flared as Marcus Bennett was cornered near the stage, his tuxedo still perfect, but his expression unraveling into panic. "This is crazy! You have no idea who I am! I own this company!" Sophia stepped forward, tone measured, quiet enough that only the microphones picked it up. "You did," she said, past tense. The officers surrounded him as Detective Martinez began reading his rights. Vanessa stood frozen a few feet away, clutching her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her once golden confidence was gone, replaced by the tremor of survival instinct. "Isabella Torres," Detective Martinez said, glancing her way, "we have your cooperation agreement, correct?" Isabella nodded quickly, eyes glassy. "Yes, I gave them everything. The account records, the deleted files, all of it."
Her voice broke, not from regret, but from the terror of being on the wrong side of a sinking ship. Marcus's head whipped toward her. You did this?" His voice rose, sharp and desperate. "After everything I gave you?" Isabella's lips trembled. "You gave me nothing but fear, Marcus." Her words hit him harder than any accusation could. The audience, now frozen, watched the once charismatic CEO unravel into something raw and exposed, a man stripped of his power. The officers took his arms. He struggled, trying to pull free, but it was useless. Reporters leaned in. Cameras flashed. "This is all her," he shouted, jerking his chin towards Sophia. "She set me up. She's manipulating everyone. You can't do this to me." Sophia didn't move, didn't blink. Her expression remained eerily calm, the picture of quiet authority that made even the officers slow their pace, almost out of respect. "You did this to yourself," she said softly. The words hung in the air, cold and absolute. Even the hum of camera shutters seemed to pause for a heartbeat before resuming their relentless flash. Detective Martinez nodded toward her, almost in acknowledgement. Justice served not with revenge, but with grace. Then she turned to Marcus. "Mr. Bennett, you're arrested." The officers guided him through the crowd, flashes igniting like fireworks behind him. Each step echoed against marble, and for the first time, Marcus seemed small, truly small. Isabella turned to Sophia, mascara smudged but voice sincere. "I'll testify," she whispered, "whatever you need." Sophia gave a simple nod. "Then do it for yourself, not for me." The ballroom doors closed behind the officers, and Marcus's echoing protests faded into distance. The audience exhaled collectively, some whispering admiration, others awe. But Sophia didn't stay to enjoy the aftermath. She walked calmly towards the side corridor, past the glittering walls, until the noise became a dull hum behind her. She stopped in the quiet sanctuary of the powder room, a private space of marble and mirrors. For a moment she simply stood there, the stillness washing over her like the first breath after surfacing from deep water. In the reflection, she barely recognized herself. The white gown that symbolized rebirth now had faint creases from movement. Her face was serene but lined with exhaustion. She reached up and removed her earrings, letting them clink softly against the sink. Her eyes dropped to her own reflection, the faint scar that peeked from beneath the fabric at her side. Slowly she lifted her hand and placed her palm over it. The gesture wasn't vanity, it was respect. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was barely audible. "We made it," she whispered to herself. But the words carried the weight of 2 lives, hers and her daughter's. The memory rose, vivid and clear. The fall, the glass, the scream that never finished. She remembered lying there, unable to move, the world fading to gray. Then softly the rhythmic beep, beep, beep of the hospital monitor, the sound of her unborn child's heart beating against death. That tiny pulse had kept her connected to the world. Now, standing before the mirror, that same rhythm echoed within her chest, calm, steady, alive. She smiled faintly, the same quiet smile she'd worn in the hospital when she'd whispered her promise. "You'll never see what I saw. You'll only see strength." The bathroom door creaked open. Mr. Richard Hayes, her lawyer, stepped in quietly, pausing at the threshold. He looked older in the golden light, his expression both proud and gentle. "It's over," he said. Sophia turned slightly, her reflection catching his. "No," she replied softly. "It's just balanced." He nodded, understanding. "The board wants to meet in the morning. They've already voted. The company's yours." Sophia breathed out, not relief, but completion. "Then tomorrow we begin again." Hayes smiled faintly and left her to her silence. Sophia turned back to the mirror one last time, tracing the faint scar under her palm, the ghost of every wound she had survived. Then she lowered her hand, adjusted her dress, and walked out, head high, steps measured, carrying grace like a crown. Behind her, the lights flickered once, as though the universe itself exhaled, satisfied that justice had finally been reflected.
6 months later, the conference room at Bennett Holdings looked nothing like it once had. The cold marble floors that used to echo with arrogance now reflected something gentler: warmth, movement, rebirth. Sunlight poured through the glass walls, glinting off the newly engraved plaque that read, "The Bennett Foundation for Women's Recovery." At the head of the polished oak table sat Sophia Bennett, now dressed not in armor, but in serenity, a tailored cream suit, posture straight, voice soft yet commanding. "This foundation," she said to the gathered board members and journalists, "isn't about rebuilding what was lost. It's about rebuilding who we are after loss." Her gaze moved to Emily Rhodes, a 31-year-old single mother who had left Bennett Holdings as an intern 6 months ago after leaving an abusive marriage. Today, Sophia slid a crisp folder toward her. "Emily, you're our new chief financial officer. You've proven more integrity than most executives I've ever known." Emily's hand trembled. "Ma'am, I don't know what to say." Sophia smiled gently. "Just say you'll keep your balance. I believe in fresh starts, not second chances." The boardroom filled with quiet applause, not for spectacle, but for meaning. Sophia glanced towards the wall, where the foundation's motto was being etched in gold letters: "Balance is power." Her reflection shimmered faintly against the glass. The same woman, but no longer haunted. Then, a phone buzzed on the table. A notification flashed across the screen from a news site. Former CEO Marcus Bennett seeks parole. Hearing claims mental distress. For a moment, Sophia said nothing. She simply turned the phone face down, voice calm as ever. "Balance," she whispered again, "always returns."
The sky hung low over the courthouse steps, heavy with gray clouds that threatened rain but held back, as if even the heavens were waiting to see how justice would end. Reporters stood in clusters, microphones ready, cameras humming with static anticipation. And then he appeared. Marcus Bennett, once the poster man of power and charisma, now looked like the echo of his former self. His orange prison uniform hung loosely on his thinner frame. His wrists, still red from handcuffs, trembled slightly as he was led toward the courthouse entrance for his parole hearing. Behind the barricades, whispers rippled to the crowd. Curiosity, pity, judgment, all blending into one restless hum. Flashbulbs flickered when the black car arrived at the curb. The rear door opened. Sophia Bennett stepped out. No entourage, no security beyond the courthouse officers, just calm, measured grace in a charcoal coat and pale silk blouse. Her hair was pinned neatly, a single silver locket at her throat, her uncle's. The cameras surged closer. The story had come full circle. Marcus saw her. For a moment, the world seemed to stop breathing. Then, as if some unseen string inside him snapped, he stumbled forward. His knees hit the wet concrete. The sound echoed, sharp, final. "Please," he said hoarsely, eyes wet and frantic. "Sophia, I've lost everything. Just—" his voice cracked. "Just let me see our son once." The crowd fell silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. Sophia's face softened, not in affection, but in memory. 1,000 images flickered behind her eyes. The staircase, the hospital, the email, the boardroom.
But what remained was not pain anymore. It was peace. She stepped closer, the click of her heels steady, poise unshaken. The reporters leaned in, hungry for reaction. But when she spoke, her voice was low, intimate, the kind of tone that cut deeper than shouting ever could. "You pushed me once," she said, words deliberate, "to prove your power. And now you're on your knees, begging for mine." Marcus bowed his head, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry. I was sick, angry, stupid. I lost control." She looked at him, really looked, not as a wife or victim, but as someone who had long outgrown the cage of his cruelty. "I forgive you," she said softly, "but forgiveness isn't freedom." A murmur swept through the crowd. Reporters caught every word. Cameras captured every blink. Marcus closed his eyes, a single tear falling onto the stone at her feet. Sophia turned to the nearest officer, tone quiet and professional. "Please escort Mr. Bennett inside. He has a hearing to attend." The officer nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Marcus tried to meet her gaze again, but she was already walking away. The guards lifted him to his feet. His knees wobbled, leaving faint, damp marks on the cold pavement, the last imprint of his pride. As she reached her car, the first drops of rain finally began to fall, not heavy, just enough to make the world shimmer. She opened the door, pausing as the driver, Thomas Hall, a man in his 50s with kind eyes and quiet loyalty, nodded respectfully. "Where to, ma'am?" Sophia's voice was calm, unhurried. "Take me to the foundation." "Yes, Mrs. Bennett." She slid into the back seat, the soft hum of the engine muffling the chaos outside. On the seat beside her sat a framed photograph, her baby son, Daniel, smiling wide-eyed at the camera, and beside it, an older image of Robert Bennett, her uncle, seated in his office with that same knowing calm in his eyes. Sophia traced the frame with her fingertips, her reflection faint in the glass. Her voice, when it came, was steady, almost a whisper meant for the memory of both. "Justice isn't loud, it's consistent." Thomas glanced at her in the mirror, respectful enough not to speak, and turned the car onto the wet road. Outside, the courthouse loomed tall, rain streaking down its stone pillars like tears that weren't hers to shed anymore. As the car pulled away, the camera panned upward, capturing the banner stretched across the building facade, bold in gold against gray. Bennett Holdings, integrity, balance, power. The raindrops glistened on the letters, like blessings. The car disappeared into the distance, carrying the woman who had turned her pain into purpose. For a long moment, the camera lingered on the empty courthouse steps, where pride had knelt and justice had stood.
1 year later, the Bennett Foundation building stood proud in the heart of the city. A modern structure of glass and light, a beacon for those seeking a second chance. Inside the main hall, Sophia Bennett stood before a gathering of women, survivors, fighters, rebuilders. Some had escaped abusive marriages. Others had lost everything to fraud and manipulation. All had found their way here. "When I fell down those stairs," Sophia said, her voice carrying across the quiet room, "I thought it was the end. But endings are just pauses before new beginnings." She looked at the faces before her, women of all ages, backgrounds, stories, each one a mirror of the woman she'd once been. "This foundation exists because I learned something important. Your worth isn't defined by who tried to break you. It's defined by how you choose to rise." Applause filled the room, not polite, but genuine, born from shared experience and mutual respect. After the speech, Sophia walked through the facility's new job training center,
childcare rooms and legal aid offices, every corner designed with care, funded by the empire she'd reclaimed. Rosa, her former housekeeper and now the foundation's operations director, approached with a tablet. "Mrs. Bennett, we have 50 new applications this week, and the housing program is ready to launch next month." Sophia smiled. Robert would be proud. "He'd be more than proud," Rosa said gently. "He'd say you finally understood what he meant about power." Sophia's eyes moved to the window, watching mothers picking up their children, women leaving with job offers, lives being rebuilt brick by brick. Her phone buzzed, a message from her lawyer, Richard Hayes. "Board approved the international expansion, Bennett Foundation going global next quarter." She typed back, "Perfect. Let's help more women find their balance." As the sun set over the city, casting golden light through the glass walls, Sophia stood in her office, a space decorated not with corporate trophies, but with photos, pictures of the women the foundation had helped, letters from survivors, drawings from children who now had safe homes. On her desk sat 2 frames, one of her son Daniel, now a healthy, smiling toddler, and one of her uncle Robert. She picked up Robert's photo, tracing the edge with her thumb. "I signed last, just like you taught me." A soft knock on the door. Emily Rhodes, the CFO, peeked in. "Mrs. Bennett, there's someone here to see you. She says you helped her 2 years ago." Sophia nodded. "Send her in." A young woman entered, mid-20s, wearing a business suit, carrying herself with quiet confidence. "Mrs. Bennett, I don't know if you remember me. I was one of the first women who came through your program. I had nothing, no money, no job, a baby to feed." Sophia's expression softened. "I remember. You worked in our training program." The woman smiled, tears in her eyes. "I just got promoted to regional manager at Thompson Industries. I came to say thank you and to donate to the foundation. Not much, but—" "It's everything," Sophia interrupted gently, "because it means you're lifting others the way you were lifted." As the woman left, Sophia returned to the window. The city lights were beginning to glow, each one a small fire against the darkness. She thought of Marcus, somewhere in a minimum security facility, attending therapy, working in the prison library. His parole had been denied, but in his latest letter, which she'd read once and filed away, he'd written simply, "I'm learning what I should have known all along. Thank you for the lesson." She hadn't responded. Some lessons needed to be learned in silence. Her phone rang. She answered, smiling at the voice on the other end. "Mama!" Daniel's voice, bright and happy, filled with the innocence she'd fought so hard to protect. "Hi, sweetheart. Are you being good for Grandma Rosa?" "Yes, we made cookies. When are you coming home?" "Soon, baby, very soon." As she hung up, Sophia looked one last time at the city below, the empire she'd rebuilt, the lives she'd changed, the justice she served, not with vengeance, but with grace. She picked up her coat and turned off the office light. The building's motto glowed softly on the wall as she passed. "Balance is power." And as Sophia Bennett walked out into the evening air, head high, steps sure, she carried with her the knowledge that sometimes the greatest revenge is simply living well and lifting others as you rise. The camera pulled back slowly, showing the foundation building glowing against the night sky, a lighthouse for the broken, a testament to the unbreakable. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled. Not threatening, but cleansing. The storm had passed. Balance had been restored.
She didn't need to destroy him. She just needed to become everything he said she couldn't be. And in doing so, she became more powerful than he ever was. This is dedicated to every woman who was pushed down but chose to rise. Your strength is your story. Your survival is your victory. If this story touched you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember you are not broken. You are breaking through.